evening, everybody. Nice to see a full crowd. I'm Melanie Korn, president of Columbus College of Art and Design. Welcome to CCAD. We're really thrilled to have you here tonight for this exciting opportunity. So this, of course, as you all know, is the Cartoon Crossroads Columbus keynote at CCAD, and we are thrilled to be able to host this every year for CCAD. I'm particularly excited to hear Bryan tonight, and I know you are as well. He'll be discussing his internationally best-selling and influential masterwork, SCOTT Pilgrim, along with many other aspects of his career, and I can't wait to hear him. CCAD's roots with CXC are deep, and it's our privilege to host cartoon enthusiasts like you every year. Our faculty, students, and alumni have played important roles in CXC since the festival's inception, and this year is no different. I'd like to extend thanks to our faculty members who were involved in planning this event and spearheading the programming. And I'd also like to extend our sincere thanks to our partners and friends at CXC. This event is also part of CCAD's annual Visiting Artists and Scholars series, and we are very thankful for our sponsors who allow us to bring innovative artists, designers, and thinkers to campus for free public events. And one of those supporters that we always like to thank is the Skestos Endowed Fund for Visiting Artists and Lecturers. I'd encourage you all to come back. Speaking of Visiting Artists series, come back this week on Thursday, October 3rd at 6:30 p.m. for our next installment of the Visiting Artists series. We are hosting artists and designers and alumni Amy and David Butler for a conversation about what it means to be an artist and designer here in Central Ohio today. Amy is best known for her colorful lifestyle and home brand, Caravan Souk, while David is known for his brand and design work nationally at American Eagle, Nike, and Timberland, and locally at Harvest Pizzeria and Three Tigers Brewing, as well as his painting. If you join us next Thursday, come even earlier than 6:30 at 5 o'clock. There's a reception, not only for the lecture, but also for the opening that will be in Beeler Gallery. That exhibition is Tracing Echoes, featuring work from CCAD faculty members Julie Abajanik and Kelly Malikosak from their New York City 2023 residency. The exhibition integrates drawings, fiber, painting, jewelry, and found objects, capturing the essence of their experience while reflecting on the personal and collective history shaping our understanding of place. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to stick around after tonight's conversation to check out Spitball 10, our Beeler Gallery exhibition celebrating the 10th anniversary of the CCAD Comics anthology, Spitball. Spitball, as some of you may know, is our student design publication that pairs CCAD students with professional writers to create a graphic anthology. Be sure to stop by on your way out. And now, I'm thrilled to welcome CCAD's Chair of Comics and Narrative Practice, Lauren McCubbin, to the stage to introduce our guests. Thank you.
Hey, buddies. I'm so excited about tonight. I'm really thankful that we get to do this kind of thing with the comics program here, with all of the comics students and the illustration students and, all of the students, because everybody loves comics. First I'm going to introduce the person who's going to be interviewing Bryan, because you should know who he is. His name is John Kelly, and for the last 30 years, he has regularly contributed work about comics history and interviews with cartoonists to the Comics Journal. He used to direct the Toonsome, a small museum for comic art in Pittsburgh, and he's hosted panel discussions and interviews at comics festivals, including the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland, CCXC right here, and Comics Arts Brooklyn. So now, let me talk about Bryan Lee O'Malley. So here are the top 3 things I think everyone knows about Bryan Lee O'Malley. 1, he is Canadian. 2, he used to live in Toronto, but no longer does. 3, he is the award-winning author and artist of Lost at Sea, Seconds, Snot Girl with artist Leslie Hung, and of course, SCOTT Pilgrim. So here are the top 3 things that I learned about Bryan this week. 1, He's very kind and generous with the CCAD comic students who got a chance to hang out with him, and it was really amazing. Scott Pilgrim is not really based on him. And most importantly, his wife Mary is an absolute delight, and I really wish we were friends. All right, enough of me. Ladies and gentlemen, John Kelly and Bryan Lee O'Malley.
So embarrassing. So much wire.
Yeah. Okay. This is working, right?
Is it on?
Yeah.
Can we hear
okay.
you?
Yeah. So,
Cool.
Very cool.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
It's a little chilly in here.
Yeah, it's hard to see with the lights, but that's maybe a good thing, right?
Yeah, just ignore them.
So,
Ooh.
one of us is doing something. So when we were at the library earlier today, I looked down a floor and I saw there was a
Getting feedback.
Yes,
Oh,
oh, sorry.
no worries. Try to clip it up a little higher.
Is this good?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Sorry about that. Yeah. I looked over the banister and I saw there were a couple people waiting online to have you sign their books.
At least two.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was good actually. I didn't know until after. People kept being like, "Thank you for staying so long," and I had no idea how much time had passed. But yeah, I was there for like.
It was like 4 hours.
It was like 4 hours.
Yeah, yeah. So does this like ever become normal?
In a weird way, it kind of does a little bit. The last few years, it's been, it's I don't know. I just kind of get used to it, or just I don't question why anymore, and I just kind of try to be nice to everyone. But yeah, for a long time, it's like, why do they like me?
Yeah.
But I guess that's not my business really, unless they tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're, this is CXC, and it's 10th year. I've been to most of them. I was here at the first one, and I think for the audience that we have here, there's probably a lot of younger, aspiring cartoonists here.
I'm assuming.
And you were once sitting where they are sitting now. You were once waiting online, like them,
True.
the way that they are. You attended things like SPX and MoCA and AP and TCAF, and
Yeah.
So in your early days, like how important was attending these types of festivals to your artistic growth?
Yeah, I think it was super important. I didn't go to art school like a lot of you guys are. Maybe all of you? No, not all of you. Couldn't be. But we are at an art school. I never went to art school. I almost applied to OCAD in Ontario, but the application was too long, and I couldn't get to the end of it. It needed a lot of drawing. So I was like, I wasn't a good student. I went to university, just took like film classes and stuff, and kind of tried to do easy stuff essentially, and dropped out eventually. But yeah, my self-education was like going to these shows and making my own comics and meeting people and like kind of finding community that way. Yeah, those shows are so important for finding community. Whereas like, the students I met the other day, like they have a community here, which is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so were you drawing like from a very early age? And
Yeah, comics too. Yeah, I was drawing from when I was really little, and I was drawing comics like from grade school, like pretty much constantly, always trying to submit comics as assignments for class, even when it wasn't required. Or I would always like go the extra mile and draw like a beautiful cover page, even if like it was science class or something. Yeah. It was excessive, but it was just like I had like this energy that I needed to get out somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved around a bit, but London, Ontario was, we could use that as the.
Yeah, that was kind of my main home base. My dad still lives there. My brother still lives there. Yeah, I don't know how big Columbus is, but it does remind me of where I grew up. Like London, Ontario reminds me of this a lot. It's my first time in Ohio, but it's just it feels very familiar. I like it.
Yeah, and that's like 2 hours or something outside of Toronto.
Yeah, it's kind of in between Detroit and Toronto. Yeah, Windsor is next to Detroit, and then London's like the next town over.
Right.
Yeah.
And so 20 years, right? That's a long time. But if we go back 20 years ago, there was a lot going on in Toronto in comics, right? So that was got to be such a really fertile place for you to have been a young, aspiring artist, to be around people like Seth and
totally. Chester Brown.
Chester Brown and Joe Matt was there.
Yeah.
And Julie Doucet and
lots of other stuff brewing too, like not just kind of alt art scene. But yeah, living in London was like London was very boring. Or it seemed boring to me anyway, and then Toronto was like right there, and I just desperately wanted to go to where it was all happening, I guess.
Yeah.
So I moved there when I was 22, I think, and got a roommate that I had met online.
You moved to Toronto.
I moved to Toronto from London, when I was about 22. And yeah, I had already done a little bit of work. I had done some work for Oni Press already. I had done some lettering and inking, I think. And around that time, me and my person who was about to become my roommate, Chris Butcher, who's a famous behind-the-scenes comics figure, I had just gotten this job doing a Spider-Man book for babies. That was like a little cardboard book. And I remember they paid me like $2,000 for it.
Oh.
And I also managed to convince them to buy me like a Wacom tablet, my first one. And then that was kind of like one of my first like kind of professional gigs, and I used that money to move to Toronto, essentially.
Okay. Okay. So even before that, though, when you were younger, though, you said you were drawing comics. So what were you seeing?
Good question.
Even the internet hadn't completely destroyed 20 years ago.
There was still no internet.
Newspaper comic strips.
Yeah.
There were.
And I just got a refresher because I went to the Billy Island yesterday. A lot of Peanuts. I remember getting those big Peanuts omnibuses from the library, and also Little Nemo. I was really into those Little Nemo omnibuses. And Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin and Hobbes was like one of my first loves, because I was like the exact right age. Like I think he worked from 85 to 95, so I was like 5 to 15 or something. And it was like the perfect comic, like so beautifully drawn. And hearing about his struggles with the syndicates and stuff, he famously wanted to do full pages or do more bigger art, and I remember reading about all that stuff and just being really fascinated. So that was an early inspiration and early kind of indicator, I guess, of like the battles to come.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're so lucky, and I mean, Billy Ireland has almost every single Calvin and Hobbes that was ever.
I know. I saw so many yesterday. Yeah.
But there's only a handful that are not in that collection.
Yeah.
So it's just staggering.
It is.
That it was able to, be kept together.
Yeah. I mean, and then like from there, like I got really into Jeff Smith because I started finding these collections of. At this store near my house, they would have these like bags of like 3 comics. Do you remember that era? And I don't know who put those together, but it would be like 3 issues of Bone.
It was mobsters.
Was it mobsters?
Yeah.
Were they stolen? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't.
they were totally. They were not on the level.
I don't think they were on the level either, but like they were cheap and I was poor.
They were supposed to be sent back to the publishers.
Oh, wow.
As remainders, and
That's
they were
incredible.
double selling them if they did.
I never knew that, but I got a bunch of Bones and Cerebuses that way when I was like 14, 15.
Well, you benefited from
Yeah.
crime syndicate.
Because yeah,
It's all bad, right? It's all
that's like, Bone really opened my eyes to like drawing. Like the way he drew, and I was just the right age to kind of understand like he was using a brush and the way that was different. And then the long form storytelling and the humor and the pathos and the adventure and action, like it was such a beautiful mishmash of everything that I loved, and it was so unique.
Yeah.
And then hearing reading about like how he, how he started out getting like whatever he did like a newspaper comic and stuff at the college. Yeah, that was kind of like the footsteps I wanted to follow. I remember I was like trying to work for King Syndicate, like when I was like college age too. I was like trying to apply to pitch
Were you
stuff to
doing
them.
tryouts?
Yeah, I think I was an editor at the time was talking to me, but I don't remember who it was. But yeah, like early on, I was like, that seemed like a really like an obvious option, like growing up on Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes. But very quickly, it stopped being a really good option, like in the 2000s. So
Yeah. Do you still have that work?
I don't think so.
No.
It didn't go very far. It was
Yeah.
like a few pages of pitches.
Tryouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess so like probably most of us in this room grew up reading comics and other things
Mhm.
but was there ever like an aha moment where you saw a comic strip or a comic book or a single panel or even like something in a drawing, that moment where you were like, yeah, that's it. I want to do that. I want to do that for the rest of my life. That's why I want to be a cartoonist.
I don't know. It's hard to call out a singular thing. There were so many like influences back then too. But I think when I got into manga, like that was kind of what I was like shortly after the kind of Jeff Smith, the mobster comic era. Manga started becoming a little bit more available in America. I found one store in London, Ontario that was selling manga, trade paperbacks from Viz, and I bought Ranma 1/2 Volume 4 because that was the only one they had, and that was my first real exposure to manga. Like I just started in the middle of this crazy weird. Ranma 1/2 is this like weird gender bending comedy action thing, like, and that really blew my mind. So yeah, probably Ranma Volume 4 was the one that it could be like a direct line to Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, and I think that's just so interesting because it's a generational thing.
Yeah.
And it's almost like people trying to envision what the world was like before the internet or something. Like there was a time when manga didn't exist really.
Yeah.
Right? You talked about Seth being an early influence, and we were talking the other day about like Dan Clowes and some other people. So those guys are like my age, right?
Right.
Like we never saw that shit.
Yeah.
It's just like
It didn't exist.
it didn't exist. I remember watching Gigantor or
Right.
Speed Racer as
Yeah.
a kid, but that was just like I didn't know what was going on with.
Yeah.
And then it was
Suddenly
something I
is
watched
a
when I was
demarcation
4.
from about like 95 to 97, like where suddenly it started to become available. Yeah.
Right, and now it's just a given. It's just taken for a given.
Everyone younger than us, it just knows it. Yeah, yeah. Everyone younger than us knows every Pokemon or whatever.
Right, and my kids are now in their 20s or even late 20s and stuff, right? So it's the Pokemon stuff and other things like that, where I experienced it that way too, but it was getting some stage notes here.
Just slide it up a little. Make sure it's pointed towards you too.
Okay, is this better?
That was very nice. That was a very gentle note from the sound guy. Thank you.
Okay, listen, I'll just say, if I do this again and I am doing that, you can stop me at any time. I'm not going to take offense.
We
to
can
it,
take a
really.
break, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, just fix it.
Okay, we were talking about manga. Where were we?
We were talking about manga, and I guess it just didn't exist for lots of people who are working cartoonists, right?
Yeah.
There's zero influence.
Yeah.
For that stuff.
You started to see it creep in a little bit in the 90s, like in some of the mainstream superhero guys, or like, Scott McCloud was always preaching about manga, but like no one had ever read any of those books.
Right.
I would read Scott McCloud's book and just like marvel at the stuff he had found and just put clips of in there because I had never seen any of it. Yeah,
Right. And I think one of the things that is so interesting to me is, as somebody who writes about comics, that looking at younger artists, it's just so. 2 weeks ago at SPX, I did a panel with some cartoonists, and we were talking about was about drawing styles basically, but Carolyn Cash talked about how Scott Pilgrim was a big influence, that she read it when she was younger, and looking at her work where it's there's the manga influence, there's the alternatives and the undergrounds and stuff, but it's just all comics.
Right.
It's just there's no discerning. It's just all comics, and I think that it's just so cool, right? And
Yeah,
it's just-
I mean, and that's, when I did Scott Pilgrim, I didn't want it to be manga. I wanted it to be my own thing. So it's, I used all kinds of influences.
Right. No, absolutely, and I think there's stuff when I look at some of your pages and I'm looking at the details of the backgrounds and scenery and stuff, and I'm seeing all different types of influence there that is.
That's okay. I think we're fine. We're safe.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much that goes into it. And then there's also just my own abilities or inabilities, It's like you're overcoming the relationship with your hand and your brush and all that stuff. So that's the learning curve too.
Right, yeah. So let's, 20th anniversary of Scott Pilgrim. I guess it officially kicked off in San Diego with the.
Oh yeah, we had some of those box sets.
Yeah, the box
but yeah,
sets
the
there.
anniversary was August 18th technically, because when Scott Pilgrim first came out, I was late turning into the printer, and then it ended up being 3 weeks late, and then I missed Comic-Con that year. I didn't miss it. I went because I had a ticket, but the books didn't make it, so I was there with nothing. So so August 18th was like 2-3 weeks later. Then I had books, and I was just looking back at these old journal posts that I made all those years ago, and it's like, for months I was like, okay, Amazon has 1 copy, Amazon has 2 copies, can you guys go buy it? And like Amazon wouldn't carry the books. I mean, it was like early different days of Amazon. But yeah, it was just like a struggle to get anyone to be able to buy it or to even see it.
Yeah. So can you walk us through just the whole genesis of how that all came about? You were doing like Lost at Sea. It was a different type of book, and where did the idea for Scott Pilgrim first enter your brain, and what exactly was the spark for that?
I mean, there's so many. All the influences like I've talked about, like Ranma and Bone and things like that. But I think moving to Toronto and finding community there was kind of one of the big sparks, because I mean, that's what Scott Pilgrim's about. But I did Lost at Sea first while in Toronto, and at that time I was making new friends, and I joined a band and all this stuff, and then when the book came out, I showed it to all my new band friends, and they were like, "Oh, it's really nice. It's so sad or whatever." And but there wasn't like a lot they could say about it because it's a very personal work and all that. And so yeah, like part of it was just setting out to make something that would make more sense to my friends, or that would be kind of more in our milieu. and setting it kind of in our neighborhood and with people our age. So, I mean, that was one of the big influences, and kind of trying to base it on my life. I just, it's another thing, I always reference this Calvin and Hobbes strip, back to Calvin and Hobbes, where he's like, I'm writing my autobiography, but this time I have a chainsaw. And that's kind of how I saw Scott Pilgrim. It's like, oh, what if it was like my life, but like this guy who's like a maniac and can fight really well. So that was part of it too, yeah.
This
like a power fantasy, but like in
yeah,
a tongue-in-cheek way.
This idealized version of me.
Idealized, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember like the first? I don't know, just even coming up with the name, you know?
Oh, well, that's from a song actually. Yeah, I love.
I heard that.
Yeah, I love
right.
this band Plumtree, and they broke up in 2000. And I was like really into them. Actually, I got a job doing their website for their last album through their label, not directly through them. And then they broke up, and I was like, I was devastated. But they had this song called Scott Pilgrim that I always loved, and it's a very simple song. It's just like a guitar riff and a couple lyrics, but. Over the years I was like, I want to use this for something. And initially I was going to title, or part of me was going to title Lost at Sea Scott Pilgrim, even though there was no character named Scott Pilgrim. And I thought like, okay, no, I should save that for something where there is a character named Scott Pilgrim. So then that was another thing that started rolling, like, who's Scott Pilgrim? What is he all about? So there's so many angles, and then it all kind of just, turned into a snowball or whatever,
Yeah.
That was a weird mixed metaphor.
The angles turning into a snowball?
Yeah.
No.
Snowballs don't even have angles.
It works. it can work. I guess one other thing is just, at what point did you go, oh, like, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be?
Oh, like when did it actually start working?
Yeah,
for
like
other people?
Just like,
Yeah, because I never really.
I mean, when we talked before, you were saying, I just assumed I was going to be doing indie comics, for the rest of my career.
Because my model.
That wouldn't be a bad career.
Yeah, my model was Seth and those guys and The Beguiling in Toronto. Like, that culture made sense to me. I thought I could sell, 1,000 copies of something now and then and make enough money, and maybe I'd have to get a side job or something. But, I worked in a restaurant after the first book, like days after it came out, because I was not making any money. But by the time the second book came out, actually I looked back at my records because I thought I worked at the restaurant for a lot longer than I actually did. Apparently I quit the restaurant like within 6 weeks. And I went back to full-time comics. I definitely couldn't afford it. I was racking up credit card debt back then, I remember. And I was in a long-distance relationship, wasting money on planes and stuff. But when book 2 came out, which is only 8 months later or something, I went back to Toronto for TCAF. I had moved to Halifax at that point. And we had like a big line, like not as big as today, but like not that far off. Like, people just showed up, and I was like, what? Who are you? So that was the first time like I realized I had an audience. Like, I had a little bit online, I had a little bit of an audience, the early internet.
Yeah.
But people showed up and wanted to talk about Scott Pilgrim. Yeah, right away.
And you just ran with it, and it just continued to grow, right?
Yeah, I really wanted to. Well, I set out to do 6 books. I thought that maybe that's a manageable scope. Maybe I can finish that by the time I'm, 30 or whatever. I was 24, 25 maybe when I started. It seemed ambitious but doable, and I wanted to do something that was ambitious but doable, and it took years, and back to the snowball. It snowballed as it went. Like, it just got bigger and bigger with each volume, and I just tried to stay kind of dedicated to finishing it and making each one better than the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the movie came out was like 10 years ago.
14.
14
2010, yeah.
Okay. So, and I guess it wasn't a giant box office success, but it's really, it's got an audience that continues to support it, and you know, it's I don't know, a cult. I don't, you know, it's definitely got a very passionate and loyal.
It's kind of the modern version of a cult hit where everyone knows what it is. Like,
right. So what do you even
it's
call
not
that?
even a cult anymore.
It's like
the cult is still culty, but like other people know what it is and have heard of it and have seen it. So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of seeped into the culture really in a much wider way than I could have ever imagined.
And the difference between now and 14 years ago is just that, you know, 14 years ago people were going to the movie theaters a lot more than they are now. So they're experiencing things in many different ways.
But not this movie. They didn't go to the movie theater for that one.
Well,
but it came out on DVD. Apparently, the DVD did really well. I didn't make any money from it, but apparently it did really well.
Really?
But I mean, it led to book sales. I did make money from the book sales.
Yeah. Well, but how did that whole thing come about, though? Like,
oh, the whole movie thing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you guys would be interested in that. I'm sure I've told the story a million times. But Edgar Wright, someone in Hollywood read Scott Pilgrim. Later I found out it was this producer named Jared LaBeouf, who was only 23 at the time, the same age as Scott Pilgrim, and he read it when it first came out. He was just one of these guys who was like a young, burgeoning Hollywood guy, and he would just go to the comic store and read everything new, and like if it looked good, he would try to put it with someone. So he just went to Edgar Wright's screening of Shaun of the Dead, which is his big movie that just came out that year, 2004, and just handed it to him and said, "This is your next movie." And Edgar called me like well before I finished the second book, winter of 2004 to 5. I remember Edgar Wright calling me from London. He was in the back of a taxi, and he has this like London, England. Yeah, I was in Toronto. He was in London, England.
Okay.
And dapper guy and energetic guy, and I was like, and I loved his movie. They sent me a copy of his movie, and I liked it a lot. And he was still kind of unknown. Like he was culty back then. Like no one really knew who he was. And but I heard all the cool kids talking about it at Comic-Con that year when I had no books and I was just sitting there. So 6 months later, I was like, oh, this guy wants to make my movie. That sounds cool. Like other cartoonists will be jealous. And then I was like, it's probably never going to happen, but at least I'll get to say that I'm working with this cool guy that other people think are cool.
They probably still are jealous.
Maybe, I don't know. They don't tell me.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, so just over time, we chatted about it. I spent a long time chasing down any form of money for this. Because when they're like, oh yeah, we're going to option your movie, they're like, we'll give you some money maybe in 18 months, if we feel like it. Over a couple years, it started to be a little more real. They wrote a screenplay a few years later that was not very good. And then I was writing the fourth book at that time. I tried to make the fourth book really good, and then it turned out they liked the fourth book, and they rewrote the screenplay kind of based on the fourth book, using the structure of the fourth book. And that one was much closer to what the finished movie looks like. And from that they started casting. I think it was in 2008. I saw a lot of casting tapes, a lot of young actors who I had never heard of, who are now like household names. I was still in Toronto. No, I wasn't in Toronto anymore. Where the hell was I? I think I was in North Carolina, maybe. I had moved around a bunch. I forget where I moved to. But yeah, I remember watching tiny little videos on my computer back then of everyone's auditions and just, it was like such a weird, surreal kind of ongoing experience.
Yeah.
But they kept asking me what I thought of everything, and then when I got to when they got greenlit and I went to the set. It's just like it's the most surreal experience of my life. Like Scott Pilgrim was so based on my own life and my own surroundings. Like to see it recreated by craftsmen on like a sound stage, like walking into a room like this, but it's like Scott Pilgrim's apartment is right in front of me. Like that's so crazy. I wish they could have just kept it like Disneyland forever, but they probably tore it down the next day. Yeah, it was a very wild experience. I didn't spend a lot of time on set because I didn't live in Toronto anymore. They shot in Toronto. I only spent maybe 2 weeks there, and I would come like for a week here and there. It was a long shoot. It was like almost all year, January through September, I think. And the whole time they were like, Universal kept telling me it was going to be a huge hit, and then it came out and it was not a huge hit, but it stuck around. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
people are still watching it, so.
yeah. So it was a hit in its own way.
Continue to. It gets introduced. It gets introduced to new,
Right.
younger, additional people all of the time. So that's the.
Yeah, and the movie it doesn't go away, and people
Yeah.
keep watching it. And now parents introduce it to their kids. Or like time moves so quickly. Like 14 years, I could meet 14-year-olds who were not born when the movie came out, and they could still love Scott Pilgrim.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So for the Netflix Scott Pilgrim Takes Off.
Yeah.
You have. Well, some of the same cast members are in.
Almost all, yeah.
Yeah. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And did you have any hand in having that happen, or is it? Take it you're pleased that that's the case.
Well, yeah, for the show, I got to kind of be the co-showrunner, which is not a title I set out to have in my life, but it just made sense. Like, it just kind of fell into my lap in a way. And a good friend of mine, Ben David Grabinski, who had a little more TV and movie experience, like, we were just chatting about the possibility of it one day, and we came up with some great ideas. And then, it just felt like the wind was behind us, and we were like, I don't know, it just worked. Everything just kind of fell into place. And I thought it'd be really fun if we could get the original cast from the movie, and just play with it in that way, and bring it back to life for people after so many years. It felt really exciting to have that opportunity. And then like the reality of like, because it's kind of like I don't know if I'm not going to spoil anything, but like if, it's a twist on the original story.
I was going to say, it's not like it's a cartoon version of the movie or anything.
Right. I didn't want to do that. Yeah, it felt a little redundant to do that because the movie was so good and in so many ways. Like even if it's not 100% like hitting the mark, it's like they're going to be comparing everything that we do in the show to the movie,
right?
Inevitably. So why not just do something silly and fun? And it was just like, it was a collaboration that on a scale that I have never experienced before, like with artists who were, drawing stuff by hand. Every frame's drawn by hand. So it's like, I had to learn to kind of, just accept all the whatever energy was coming from all these people. Like they all draw in their own way, and they all have their own interests on what they want to draw. That's how I feel about artists. Like you have to let them draw what they want to draw, otherwise they'll be unhappy and chafing. So it was just like they assign the right artist to the right episodes or the right scenes, and then the art keeps coming in, and it was just like day by day for 2 years, just watching it build, and then trying to keep the secret, which that was probably the most stressful part, like knowing that it was going to be a big twist. I didn't want to talk to anyone for like 2 years. So keep doing like an NDA kind of secret thing. That was not fun.
Yeah.
It was worth it for me. I don't know, but yeah, it was not that fun.
What was that experience like though? Just like watching this is your creation, and you're having like a whole team of people doing various elements to do minuscule little aspects of this giant project. It must be bizarre.
It is bizarre, yeah. And then some people come up to me and they're like, "Wow, how did you draw that whole cartoon?" I barely lifted a finger.
Dude, take credit for all of it.
No, it was dozens, maybe hundreds of people. I don't know, all over the world, really. It was like a traditional Japanese anime kind of process, which obviously I knew very little about. I never set out to be an animator or an animation guy, but it was again like they had so much respect for the source material that they just really observed my style, and they really they really were faithful to kind of like the feeling of the comics in a way that I didn't really have to like give heavy notes at all. I barely had to tell them what to do, and you know, a few like color notes and stuff like that, or like she would wear shorter socks. Like it was just like, it was very small things like that. You know, I got to write every script, and that's something that was fun. Co-writing them with my friend. It's just like I hated doing group projects as a kid, as a student, but I loved doing this. Maybe it's because I was the boss.
Yeah.
But you know, I always wanted to do comics because I love being a lone wolf and doing my own shit and not having to worry about what people think. But yeah, this whole process was very warm, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was very lucky, obviously, in so many ways, but
Right.
It's a good situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it is so much of the comics, especially at festivals like this where they're indie created. It's one person doing everything,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And the history of the medium shifts backward, up and down through that. There's a studio system history. There's you know, the early newspaper comic strip artists pretty much did everything themselves as well.
Yeah.
But then you get into other golden ages of comic books and stuff where there's people who have specific duties, where they're colorists or pencilers or, you know, inkers and, you know,
Yeah.
letterers or whatever it is. And now we're in this other area where there's a lot more full authorship, right?
Right.
So,
True. Yeah.
So it's an ever changing medium, which you know, which is one of the things that makes it so fascinating to me. At least.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's cool that you can do a comic all by yourself. Like, it's not easy. It's not always desirable, maybe, but it's like you can, and you could put anything in it, and you could anything they could do in a movie, you could put in a comic conceivably and draw it, and it would not cost $100 million.
Right.
It costs essentially nothing. So
Right.
that to me was always like the kind of like blue sky of comics. Like I could just do anything, and it would be possible as long as I could figure out how to draw it and how to represent it. So
Yeah.
yeah, to me that's still like that's fertile ground. I don't know. Anyone can do anything.
Sure. What's interesting though too is with Scott Pilgrim is that the music is such an important part of
Right.
the storyline, right? And you can create that experience through drawing, but it's certainly different than
Yeah.
seeing it in a film or, you know.
Yeah, you can kind of create this kind of subjective experience in music. Like, yeah, someone like Pete Bagg like draws really interesting like band Emanata and stuff like that. Or like I was really influenced by this manga called Beck in the 2000s that was like about a band, and the way that this guy, I think his name's Harold Sakuishi, he would draw like you know, the singer like would like hold the mic up, and then it would be like you turn the page and it's like a 2-page spread that's kind of like a visual metaphor of some kind, like a volcano erupting or something, you know. So it would just be like super dramatic depictions without really telling you what it sounds like. You just kind of feel it, and I always thought that was so cool that you could do sound in a soundless medium
Yeah.
that way. Yeah. How are we doing for time? Oh, are we late?
Yeah.
Should we do Q&A now?
Yeah.
We're gonna move to Q&A in just a sec. So if you are interested in asking a question, you're gonna have to go to the back of the auditorium and line up to get your question. And there's gonna be 2 people with microphones who need to come out and get set up right now.
You can't all ask questions.
Oh no.
Watch us, we'll do it.
All right, sorry, I was just given a little hint, so, there's just so much action going on in the back, you guys. So we don't have forever for questions. A lot of you want to ask questions. Why don't you guys do this in class? That was from a comics faculty. Please get to the point of your question quickly. We all know you love Bryan. He's the best. Succinct.
Yeah, if you already bet me today and told me you love me, then you don't have to repeat the part where you love me. Where's the mic?
You mentioned that Evangelion has influenced you. What do you think of the last Eva film?
I loved it. I don't remember the timeline of when I watched it. I think I had at least partially written the show already, SCOTT PILGRIM Takes Off, which does have some superficial similarities. So yeah, but it wasn't like a primary influence on me, but I really absolutely loved The Last Evangelion, which is like a total crazy flip on the whole premise of Evangelion.
So the relationship between your work and music is like so beyond apparent. What are you listening to right now?
Oh my God. Nothing. Listening to you ask me a question. No, what have I listened to lately? I don't know. I only listen to BTS now because my wife listens to BTS. I listen to other stuff, and then I'll be like, oh, I listen to this Korean noise band called Parannoul. They're great. You like them?
Yeah.
Mars? All right, thank you. They're great. They're amazing. But it has nothing to do with BTS. I'm sorry. Also, I'm Korean. It has nothing to do with me being Korean. I just thought they were really good. They're very loud, and they're very good. Who's next?
Hi, Bryan.
Yo.
Fuck, shit. So, one of my favorite things is like fictional bands in like cartoons and in like comics and stuff. What bands specifically influenced Sex Bomb and Clash at Demon Head? Because I always kind of saw Envy as like Gwen Stefani.
Gwen Stefani, that's good. Clash of Demon Head was a lot of influence from Metric. They were kind of blowing up at the time in Toronto, and I was like, oh, she's so cool. She's so like, her like posing and like, I don't know. She just was really an interesting figure for me to like think about and draw. Or, you know, I didn't draw her exactly, but yeah, Envy was really influenced by that character, or that real person, Emily Haynes. And Sex Bomb was kind of a stew of stuff, but more like, Sex Bomb was more like my bands, like not real bands, like shitty bands that were just practicing and never really gonna get anywhere. Because that's so much fun. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever been in a band here, but it's fun to just hang out with your friends and, you know, maybe smoke a little weed and play some music. Like that's fun. So I really, when I started SCOTT PILGRIM, like I really wanted to show like that it sucks. It's gritty and gross and nasty to be in a band and like play in venues and stuff. But I didn't really get around to that. So I made it look pretty clean. And that's about all I got. Thank you. Who's next? Yep.
My question is a little multi-layered.
Uh-oh.
So, why do you think SCOTT PILGRIM became successful as fast as it did? Did Oni Press put a lot of effort into promoting it
No.
from the beginning?
No, there was no promotion. It was totally like grassroots, like earlier internet era, like, and also retailers around the country. Someone would read it and just be like, I love this, and they would push it on people. And, you know, and a lot of you today, like said, you give the book to like 5 of your friends or whatever. It's like, that's just how it went. Yeah, it was crazy. It just kind of back to the snowball. It snowballed from there, yeah.
And lastly, at what point did you start actually getting invited to shows?
Wait, stop getting invited?
No, start getting invited.
Start.
Oh, like as a guest at stuff like this?
Yes.
Oh,
Today.
no, yeah, definitely before today. Well, I was a guest at Comic-Con when the movie came out, but I think there was probably a little bit before that. But yeah, by the time the movie came, because it's like the comics and the movie were like so closely intertwined that it's hard to separate. Like I you know, I think by the time the movie came out, then they were like, okay, we'll take him seriously. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is some kind of like broad, sweeping advice you would have for someone who's looking to get into publishing like their first comic?
Draw fast. I always say draw fast. Draw stuff you don't want to draw. Like on the business side, I don't know. I'm terrible at business. Try to get someone smart to look at your contracts. I had my dad look at them, but he was like, "I'm Canadian. I can't really do anything about this." He was a Canadian lawyer. Yeah. I don't know. It's just like the drawing the comic part is so hard, but then everything outside of like getting it made and making it happen is also so hard. So it's really. Hopefully just me being here and talking in general is helpful, but I don't really have like a lot of specifics. Plus the world has changed so much. So I just hope you can find a way. I believe in you. Oh, this way.
So,
Hi.
hi. This is a more specific question, but why exactly are knives, eyes, dots?
Oh, why? I mean, I don't really answer questions like that for myself a lot of the time. It's just kind of a vibe thing. I don't know. It's just.
Because I know like some of your earlier works you drew with like normalize, and it kind of freaks me out.
Yeah, but that was like before I figured. Yeah, I mean, it's just character design, right? It's just like she's young, she's cute. Like maybe it hints that she's a different ethnicity in a way, but like it's not like I didn't draw every Asian character with dot eyes either. So it's like it's just a vibe thing. Yeah, I don't really have a good answer. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. So, part of the reason I liked Scott Pilgrim so much is because I really related to the female characters in the books, and I often don't find that in a lot of more mainstream comics, so I was so drawn to Scott Pilgrim because of how well the female characters were written. Like, obviously, you're not a woman, so where did that come from? Because I found them to be really three-dimensional, and that surprised me a lot, especially since Scott is a loser.
But he's a three-dimensional loser. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been drawn to complexity, also drawn to women. I am straight. And I was in my 20s, I really wanted to understand people in general and women specifically, so I don't know, I observe and I'm sensitive and it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's just like, it didn't really, I like drawing women and then I wanted to write good dialogue for them. I don't know, it's just like, one panel to the next and eventually it becomes complex and something kind of springs off the page. Yeah. Thank you. How we doing?
Hello.
Hey.
So, how did you come up with "bread makes you fat"? Because it's such like
Well,
an iconic line now, and also just like
It's true,
in general,
right?
how do you go about like writing your character's dialogue? Because I feel like I kind of struggle with that as an aspiring comic artist.
I mean, I think I literally just found out bread makes you fat, and I was like, that would be funny if Scott didn't know that, because I didn't know it either. And then I just kind of kept hammering on it because I thought it was funny. But yeah, dialogue, it's still, I write dialogue to this day. I still write dialogue. I like kind of the rhythms of speech, but also it's more about what fits in the balloon for me. And like, I'll change the wording so many times to like make it fit perfectly in the shape of whatever balloon I drew. I change the dialogue up until the very last second constantly. And try to come up with better stuff. So I don't know, it's just like my own obsession, just doing it and doing it and doing it. And listening to people.
Thank you, Bryan. All of us are very pleased with that answer.
Wait, what do your students do wrong? Or is it you?
We tell them that.
We tell them edit.
Oh, edit. Yeah, well, because it's got to be short. Yeah, even mainstream comics, they put way too many words in the balloons. It's like, you got to keep it small. You got to keep it moving.
Overall, did you enjoy your experience working on the animated series? And if you had the opportunity, would you work in another animated series?
I had a really good time. Yeah, it was during COVID, so it was a little weird. Like, we were on Zoom, and we got locked down a few times. But we also got to record in the studio a bunch. And that stuff was like so much fun, just being in the studio, figuring out jokes, and like having frickin' Jason Schwartzman like rattling them off, you know, and like yeah, that's like a once in a lifetime like, you know, experience for me. So I would have happily done more. Netflix was not interested in doing more right at this point, so we you know, but yeah, it was tough to leave the studio, and I just wanted to keep doing it forever. I didn't get to do animation, obviously. That was all coming in from Japan, so every day I would be like watching my own show 15 times, like to look for mistakes and stuff. So that part was a little boring, but yeah, the writing, recording, all the kind of like creative stuff was like so much fun. It was like so rewarding for me. I would love to do more someday.
Hi.
Hey.
When it comes to watching or you know seeing a work that's so personal to you be adapted into something like a movie where it goes through so many hands that aren't yours and it goes through like the mouths of performers that are not you, did anything come out to you and kind of surprise you about seeing those adaptations of your work, or seeing like, I don't know, Michael Cera's like you know, performance of Scott? Did you learn something about the characters that you maybe didn't intend?
Yeah, I mean, and you can see it if you watch the show too. It's like, especially the evil X's, like I didn't really flesh them out that much in the book. They're only on a few pages each generally. And once I'm sure I've told this story many times, but like I went to LA I don't know when, but like a year or two before the movie, when we had cast Jason Schwartzman again, and he wanted to sit down with me and ask me about Gideon. And this is at this point I was like on book 4 or 5, and I hadn't even really figured out what Gideon was going to be all about. So it was like, his questions were so eye-opening to me, like what an actor needs to think about. It can't just be like, he's a bad guy. Like that's not enough to go on. They need kind of like more of a soul for whatever their character is. So yeah, so revisiting it recently, it was just like, I really wanted to give those characters kind of like more of my empathy, where like I wasn't thinking about them that much originally. I was just like, this is funny, he'll blow up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, so first of all, thank you again for Knives Chow.
You're welcome.
Second of all, this is a really niche question, but it has been burning in the back of my mind for like 5 years. I remember hearing a long time ago that the drawing in the movie that Scott shows of Rivers was done by you. Is that true?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was drawn digital, and I did 3 or 4. Because initially Edgar was like, yeah, it should just be your style. You should just draw Ramona. And I was like, I don't feel like that's funny. Like, so I drew this really bad version and sent it to him, and then that's what made it into the movie. Yeah, I still love it. It's like so stupid.
Hi.
Hey.
So you use a lot of like surrealism within your work. How do you come up with all of that? Because it's really like representational and stuff.
That's pretty broad.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, with Scott Pilgrim, it's like just like I said, like what if I had a chainsaw kind of thing? Like, you know, what if every character had some crazy thing going on, or what if like kind of I could combine comics and anime and games like with my mundane world. Yeah, and I think like I was reading, you know, 100 Years of Solitude around that same time too. Like magical realism was like on my brain, so there's that. Seconds is more like kind of fairy tale-ish. Like it was more influenced by like Diana Wynne Jones and like children's authors that I loved when I was younger. So I don't know. I'm always a little bored with like plain reality, so I always want to kind of like put a little hat on it. Yeah. Thank you.
So do you think your sort of ascension to, comic author kind of stardom has affected your like approach to the writing and artistic process at all? And like how has that kind of melded with your general life experience to kind of shape, your artistic and writing kind of process?
It definitely gives me pause, like to see the impact that I've had, because generally it's been good. But there's definitely like bad seeds, bad aspects of it that I wouldn't have anticipated. So yeah, it gives me pause. Like, I don't want to write something that will make people worse, I guess. I don't know what that means, but like, I don't know. I don't want to like create a conspiracy theory or something like that. Like, it's just like, I feel like I have way too much power. So I just have to kind of like find ways to tell stories that are still fun, but that are, I don't know, that I know there's an audience, and like I wanted to make something that kind of like works for the broadest possible audience. Like especially with the Netflix show, it was going to be translated into like 15 languages day one, all over the world, and like I knew that going in. So it's like you kind of have to craft the story in a slightly different way. Like it's not quite as personal and esoteric as like my own brain. You kind of have to make it broader, yeah. So that's changed that a little bit. Hopefully in my personal work, I'll still be as weird as fuck. Thank you.
Hello. What was your favorite character to like create in Scott Pilgrim?
Favorite character? Well, I liked writing Scott at the time. Like, he's such a fun, weird, complicated mess. Like, that was really fun to work on. And same with Ramona. Like, Ramona kind of really grew over the telling. So those two were always just kind of like the glue. And everyone else was fun in their own way. But like, yeah, I was really dedicated to those two when I was doing the original series. Thank you.
So when working on your writing, is there any exercises that help you revisit your past experiences? Are there anything that help you create opportunities to live new experiences that help your writing? And is there any examples that we can look forward to in the return of SCOTT Girl later this year?
I don't know. I don't really do like exercises in that way. Trying to think. With SCOTT Girl, is there anything? Well, I mean, so like, not to get personal, but like my mom died about 5 years ago, like, and that's kind of like why SCOTT Girl wound down in the first place, because I was very busy visiting my mom, and then the new volume has. We were always going to do this, but it's not. SCOTT Girl has a mom. The mom is more of a character in this volume, so maybe that's like channeling something there as far as personal experiences. But when I'm writing, like, I don't know, I just kind of, yeah, I just make shit up, I guess, and then some of it ends up being from dredging up stuff from internally. But yeah, it's not like there's no logic to it, I guess. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming to CCAD. It's a very big inspiration for many young ones who probably learned Scott Pilgrim at the time. Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask, because as the TV show went up on Netflix, I wanted to ask this question to the actual creator to get a final response. Do you count Scott Pilgrim Takes Off an animated series or an anime?
Well, to me, it's anime because of the production process and the collaborators that we had. But for them, it was a very unique, like, one-off thing. So I can understand if someone wants to not call it anime, but like the process was anime. Maybe the final product is not anime, if you want to split hairs. But it was definitely an international co-production of anime to me.
Thank you. This was like a big discussion at the time, so thank you.
Yeah, it was a very annoying discussion to me. Because like, honestly, I don't care what you call it, but we were working with an anime studio. They had an anime process that's a very deep historical process that they've been doing for decades, and I got to work with lots of like top professionals in the field. Like our sound mixer mixed "The Wind Rises" by Miyazaki. Like, it was just legends are all around. So I mean, you know, call it what you want, but like, I worked with a bunch of fucking anime people on it.
So in Scott Pilgrim, you have like, it's not like a significant amount, but you have like LGBT representation with characters like Wallace and Mobile, etc. Was there any like real life inspiration behind that, or any intention behind including characters like that?
Yeah, I mean, when I moved to Toronto, in my early 20s, my roommate was Chris Butcher, who's a noted gay man. And he's like the direct inspiration for Wallace Wells, like, because we were roommates for a few years. I hung out with him and his friends. Other Scott was also like, we had this friend named Scott Robbins, who was a librarian, who was gay, and we loved him. And I haven't seen him in years, but like, I would still love him if I saw him again. Yeah, and like it would just kind of moved in gay circles for a while, and yeah, it was a big eye-opening. You know, I went to Catholic school in London, Ontario. Like I didn't really know any queer people until then, so I was just learning about the world, and I tried to just be true to what I was seeing.
All right, everyone, let's say thank you to Bryan Lee O'Malley and John Kelly.